Hi everybody, so it is Saturday the 13th and I just finished teaching both spin and yoga. I'm gonna make me some tofu scramble with a lot of kale, but I wanted to go over kombucha for those of you who had interest in making it. I love this routine so much. It's one of my most favorite things that I do. It's kind of like guerrilla food. I love it. I don't use glass. I don't buy kombucha. I make my own. It costs almost nothing to make. Well, that's not true. It costs something, but compared to what you buy, it's ridiculous. And it's simply kombucha is fermented tea. It's a traditional Chinese therapy drink beverage. It's amazing, and it starts with a SCOBY, and you have to either be given a SCOBY or you make a SCOBY. And every time you make a batch of kombucha, it will create a SCOBY. So this is from a batch that I just made, and you see it's like an alien. And SCOBY is an acronym for a synergistic community of organisms, bacteria, and yeast. So it's a whole, still don't really even know what it is, but it does that. It feeds off of a sweet tea blend, which my blend is made of black tea, green tea, and then say hi to Rosie. Hey, Rosie, hey. And then I add in like a flavored tea. Cool. Okay, so I add in a flavored tea. Rose is what my preference is, or sometimes I'll add in a pomegranate green tea. This is not the primary source of what the SCOBY eats. The SCOBY thrives on sugar and black tea. Green tea is even a little bit more of a moderate strain of what the SCOBY wants, I found. So in this amount, which is about 13 cups of water, this is my go-to. My rhythm is to make this, and then at the same time, I'll have a tea that's been brewing. And so this is actually the SCOBY from this tea with a cup of the tea to go to start the next. It's called a starter. Rosie, stop it. Stop. This one I've already flavored. So I took out the SCOBY. That's what this is. I took out the SCOBY. I've added freeze-dried raspberries. I've let it sit overnight. This one's going to get ready to get strained and bottled for the second fermentation, meaning when it creates the bubbles. It's a little bit, it'll have bubble like an effervescence at the end of the first round of 8 days. I go for 8 days. You can go to 8 days, 9 days, 10 days. It just eats the sugar out. So if you like it sweeter, less time, more time's going to get more like a vinegar. So if you forget it, it's not a big deal. The SCOBY doesn't go bad. It's just sitting in the juice. It's actually a really powerful starter tea. So don't throw it away. It took me a long time to get comfortable making kombucha, and once you get your rhythm, I know you're going to love it. So this one we'll deal with after, but this is ready for the second fermentation. This one I'm just going to show you. I'm making a sweet tea that the SCOBY will go into. So I take all of this is my system. I take all of these tea bags. You can definitely do this with bulk tea. And I use my kale elastics because they're sturdy and strong, and I put it around the edge. So with this portion, 13 cups, I'll make the tea. I'll add a cup of sugar, and then I'll add prepared hot water. And so this really is just a super sweet tea. So if you were to taste it, it would be delicious. And so I don't fill this all the way up with hot water because it's going to take all that time to cool. So I fill it up with just enough to cover the tea bags and to let them do their thing. And then in about 5 minutes, I'll drain out the tea bags and then add cold water. So while I'm doing this, I'm just going to put this aside, and then I'm going to show you how I handle the flavors. So now this is ready. Lid comes off, and you're going to want all of these things by this point. So like if you start a kombucha, you're going to want this to have all of your bottles, all of the things, your strain, your funnels. You don't want to have metal in this. And you can purchase a kombucha set from me with instructions on how to do this written. But for this, I'm going to strain this out, and I use my Vitamixer, and I put a plastic sieve to catch the fruit. And I'm just going to pour it through and get my bottles ready. And so I have chalk stickers on my bottles to write the dates so that I know how long it's been sitting on the counter. I know, because when you're using glass, and it really should, just a word to the glass, it should be, don't buy this shit at TJ Maxx, don't buy it at like Home Goods. It really should be a brew quality, like you can make beer in it, because these becomes bombs. And I've had 2 bottles, both of which I bought. They were specialty bottles. They exploded in the middle of the night. One of them, I mean, thank God, like, it's a bomb. It's under pressure, and it's glass, and it goes everywhere. And one time it was a hot mess, and I was so thankful that my dogs were not near it. The other time, I think my mom was in the house. She just blew out the bottom. So all the bottle was intact, and just the bottom came out, and all the liquid was everywhere all over the counter. It's scary. So you should definitely have a healthy fear around kombucha making, a healthy respect for it having that, you know, when you're playing with fruit and fermentation, that if you're not accustomed to it, then put it aside, put it in a space that you're not going to forget about, set your timer on your phone, have it within your routine that you look at it all the time, or you're at least visiting it and checking the date all the time. Rosie, zip it. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to give it a good mix, because I really do want everything from the bottom. I've noticed, and I've also read about that when there's like a residue that goes on the bottom, it should be integrated into the whole batch. It actually helps the fizzy. So what you're doing with the second fermentation is continuing the fermentation process. So it's actually living off the remaining sugars, but now you're trapping the air. So that's creating the gas, which creates the carbonation. So I press this through, and I just get rid of as much liquid as I can, because that's kombucha, that's your drink. I have not done anything with this fruit, so if you can see this, it's like mush. I'm sure you could bake with it. I'm sure you could put it in your compost to speed things up. I just get rid of it. And so then I'm gonna pour this through. And then this is the strained kombucha with just, this was flavored with just raspberry. Sometimes I do raspberry ginger, blueberry ginger, just ginger, depending on what I'm in the mood for. But I'm so in love with raspberry. And then these are my bottles with the funnel. And this will be, I think, this amount will be 2 large bottles and 3 smaller. And so I just keep doing this. And you don't want to fill it all the way, because you do want it to be able to. So I just do the first pour into the sink because it's a lot of liquid, and I usually spill it. But now it's more manageable, and the bulk of the fruit is out, so it's not going to slam and mess. I'm telling you, making kombucha is like one of my most favorite things to do. It makes me feel like I'm taking care of myself. It's a rhythm. You have to have respect for it. You don't have to do it consecutively. So that SCOBY that I showed you in the beginning, if you're like going away and you don't have time to start another batch, or you're not sure when you're going to be around for that last batch, you can just put it in the fridge, and the fridge stops the fermentation. Or slows it down. And I mean, imagine the flavors that you can do. Fruits like pineapple or mango, fresh fruit, those all become super volatile. They ferment really fast. They actually can become alcoholic, but they do ferment pretty fast. And those are the ones that I find, if I've added pineapple or something like that, those are the ones that become explosive. And you'll find your rhythm, like the temperature of your house is going to make a difference on how long it takes to ferment. I have found that in this house, in this space, that 8 days is a good time for the first fermentation. And then by the time that brew is up and ready to be made into a flavored Booch, I'm ready to put the ones that are on the counter, these bottles, which would be on the counter, in the fridge. And if I'm not sure, like if it's a volatile fruit or if I've added a lot of raspberries, then I'll put one bottle in the fridge because it changes when it's cold. I'll put one bottle in the fridge and check for fizzy. And then I know from there going forward if it needs a day or two more or if it's ready to go. You kind of always want to be mindful when you're opening a Booch until you get your rhythm. I think I've been making this for like 5 years now. So I'm kind of, it's like you're creating a relationship. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And then, so these are the lock lids and they clamp shut. I used to write the flavor on them, but now I'm pretty much, my go-tos are raspberry or blueberry ginger, unless I'm doing something. I used to do like a strawberry with a different sugar. That's a whole other conversation, is altering the sugar. Like Sucanat is a more molassesy, so it would almost actually taste like a beer. I would make it with freeze-dried strawberries. So I'm just marking that this is the 13th on each of these bottles on the chalk labels with a chalk pen. And something from when I was in cooking school is like label everything. The date, right? So just like that. I don't know if, can you see that? And then these will go aside and hang out on my counter. Now, I'm gonna come back to this brew, which this is still pretty hot. So you don't wanna put the SCOBY in hot liquid. So I'm going to run some filtered cold water into this so I can take the tea bags out so that I don't take up your whole afternoon with this video. But this is also something that you don't have to do like boom, 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 boom. You could like, hey, make the tea, go out, come back. Also, if you're worried about caffeine, it's in the first minute, I think. I think I read something like it's in the first minute. So I'm just squeezing out, exhausting the tea bags, and now I'm letting it fill up with cold water. And then this is from that batch that we just flavored with the tea, the starter tea, which is kind of like the inoculate to go in to start the fermentation. It's like giving it a little boost. And then the SCOBY. So the SCOBY is sort of like this weird, it's weird, not gonna lie, it's pretty weird. It's like an amoeba alien kind of thing. And this is called the mother, right? So every time you make, so I could pull this apart. You see this one? It's like not attached, but it's attached. I could pull it apart. It's a layer. So when it sits on your counter undisturbed, it creates another SCOBY that you can then give away with some of that tea. And then you also want to keep your mother. So if you just keep getting mothers, you can just keep putting them in the fridge. And so you always have one. When you get a really big, fat, beautiful mother, like when it starts to grow, because it will grow and thicken, that you, in the event something happened to a batch, that you always have a backup SCOBY. Then I'm going to pour this in. So this is like good temperature now. I'm going to pour the tea in and this crazy amoeba kind of little thing. And she's filled a little tiny bit too much. And then I have my cute little breathable, designated solely for my kombuchas, which are my old SoulCycle hand, bandanas. And I put it over, and I take my kale elastic, and I hook it all in. You want to make sure that there's no gaps, especially in the summer, because little fruit flies will go in there and party, and you do not want to have that party happen at your house. And then that's it. And so I've marked this. I don't know if you can see it, but I've marked the date. I've marked when I made it, and then I'm going to mark when I'm going to first check it. So this goes on my counter for 8 days, and I just like let her hang out next to the bottles that are second fermenting. And I have this whole rhythm so that the bottles that just went into the fridge from the last batch that are ready because I'm making this batch are for me to drink all this week for the next 8 days. Okay? Any questions? Post them. Peace out.